we stop talking about politics? It's so negative. Let's start talking about Saturday drag brunch. I love gay people. But we should definitely pregame because I feel like the cost of tequila is like going like really up for some reason. Also, wait, do I like have something like on me? Everybody was flipping me off as I was entering. Yeah, we still have the Cybertruck. Why?
59. Because finite or veiled sexuality is one or another struggle which its participants mean to win, it is oriented toward moments, outcomes, final scenes. Like all finite play, it proceeds largely by deception. Sexual desires are usually not directly announced, but concealed under a series of feints, gestures, styles of dress, and showy behavior. Seductions are staged, scripted, costumed. Certain responses are sought, plots are developed. In skillful seductions, delays are employed, special circumstances and settings are arranged. Seductions are designed to come to an end. Time runs out. The play is finished. All that remains is recollection, the memory of a moment, and perhaps a longing for its repetition. Seductions cannot be repeated. Once one has won or lost in a particular finite game, the game cannot be played over. Moments once reached cannot be reached again.
I voted for my own job loss. Like a damn fool. And I ain't ashamed to admit it. I won't do that again.
Hey, have you seen this millennial cringe compilation? It's so funny.
Ooh, I haven't, but this is an interesting topic. I'm seeing more and more millennial core and cringe compilation videos, and we see online commenters all the time telling people that they're being millennial, which at this point has become synonymous with being cringe. And it's become so pervasive that it's actually starting to seem like the desire to tell someone that they're being cringe is stronger than the feeling of cringe itself.
Okay, yeah, it was actually like a simple...
I'm not saying that some people don't go over the top, but if someone has recorded and uploaded a video of themselves, then clearly they feel comfortable with how they're presenting to the world. So to then be met with an onslaught of accusations of being cringe, often for something as simple as an enthusiastic facial expression, it's starting to feel like we're monitoring each other's behavior. When we let someone know that they've elicited a cringe response, we are discouraging them from setting themselves apart in any way. Fear of cringe can create a fear of curiosity and discovery.
I guess.
The more you condition yourself to express a cringe response to anything that feels out of place, the more you develop a distaste for individuality and a fear of standing out. And listen, if it's become cringe to make a facial expression or be performative, does that mean it's cringe to have a feeling other than apathy? We need to feel freedom to express joy and outrage and humor, because if not, that's how we end up with cultural homogeneity. No queer culture, no experimenting with gender expression, and that is what the far right wants.
Parents, don't raise a weirdo. I don't know how else to say it. Don't raise a weirdo that struggles in life, because you allowed them to be weird at home. Remember, home is the training ground. So you don't get to talk in that weird voice. You don't get to act weird. You don't get to do weird things and touch in a weird way, right? But instead, I'm preparing you for life. That life is about going into the world, in a sense, and you can stand out in a sense, but we also want to fit in. I'm in the world, but I'm not of the world. And they'll get in the junior high years, and they're like, hey, I want to do this. I know. We don't do weird things. We don't dress weird. In high school, we had, I don't know what they have today, we had goths. And gothic people, that, right, the guys would dress and they'd get all makeup and eyeshadow and everything else. And you stop. What are we doing? What parents are allowing that? I asked my dad, I wanted to get a mohawk like some other kids in the 8th grade. He said, absolutely not. Thank God he didn't allow me to do that, because Andersons don't get to be weird. We can have our own fashion and stuff, but not weird, right? We can stand out in a sense, but we still need to fit in. There'll come a time when you're trying to get a job. There's a time that you go out into the world, and we need to fit in, and we need to train our children. They don't get to do crazy stuff in their room. You can decorate your room, but you don't get to go all goth and all weird and all dark. No, because this is your atmosphere. And so it's important that we are at the training ground, training up our children who can fit in, that can fit into society, yet still stand out and be who they were created to be.
Could there be a correlation between NPD and privilege? Sometimes it's not trauma that breaks them, it's entitlement that binds them. My good friend Eleni, who I believe is now she's speaking on TikTok, talks a lot about the fact that abusers don't have an anger problem, they have an entitlement problem. One of the critical misunderstood dimensions of NPD is the intersection of emotional neglect and material overindulgence. It's not always about a violent or traumatic background. It certainly can be, but it's about that emotional neglect and being told or shown you are the center of the universe, the grandiosity. You can do no wrong, so there's no accountability. No one else matters, the lack of empathy. You should never feel pain, and you can behave how you want and when you want. Entitlement. That narrative plus material indulgence plus emotional neglect equals a very dangerous cocktail. These are children that were never taught or shown empathy. They were not expected to care about anyone else's feelings and were in fact taught the opposite, that they're the most important person in the room. Very spoiled, never told no, no sense of boundaries. These were kids that pushed other children's boundaries and the parents said, that's totally fine. And remember, if this is a person that came from the narcissistic family, then they were put into a role, not seen as a person with needs, wants, and feelings, but either expected to perform, to be the trophy winner, or the source of blame. I have two key examples of how this can play out. One is Peggy, and another is a guy that I dated earlier in my life. Very wealthy, zero consequences for anything that he did wrong. Overindulged to the point that he held no accountability for anything that he did wrong or the things that he did to harm other people. But he was also held to impossible standards. Emotions, we don't have time for that. And you will come home with a report card with straight A's or else. Because here's the thing, if he crashes a car, they can pay for that. They can protect their image. But if he gets a B in math, they can't pay to raise that grade. And that's what they pay attention to. Then we've got Peggy, who's literally the inverse of this dude, did not grow up with money, underindulged, left behind, emotionally neglected as well. He made himself wealthy. He steamrolled everyone around him. Because he's got that sense of entitlement, lack of empathy, and the grandiosity, it's really easy for him to do. He over-identified with power and control, achievement and status to overcompensate for that early shame. But bringing it back to the sense of entitlement, whether you're the first dude who's really wealthy and never was held accountable for anything, or you're Peggy who steamrolls his way to the top, they both have this in common. The hedonic treadmill, the entitlement loop. They get hits of dopamine off of power, sex, money, status, but it doesn't soothe them for very long. Once that dopamine hit fades, they're still looking, which is why their target is their narcissistic supply. You become that fuel. And the result of an abuser that thinks they're entitled, when they're met with the word no, Peggy used to say, no motivates me. When you say, this isn't about you, you get, why not? You hold up the mirror, they rage. And if you leave, you will be punished. There will be an extensive smear campaign and post-separation abuse. And that's just it. I have no power, no money, no resources, but I have something that they don't. Peace and a true sense of self. And they hate that.
So I saw a post earlier today that said parents these days think they are entitled to a relationship with their children and their grandchildren. What? Entitled to a relationship with the children that I gave birth to? No, it's not a sense of entitlement that we want to continue a relationship with our adult children after their childhood. That is simple, just math and how things go. Your child grows up, they get married, they have children of their own. We still want to be a part of that. What in the world is all of this? We think we're entitled to a relationship with our adult children. That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my life. It's kind of like saying you adult children think that you're entitled to treat your parents any way you want to treat us, and we should just lay down like the doormat that you have labeled us and continue to let the kicking happen. Sorry, all of us grow weary. Took me years and years and years of abuse, and I mean, I could tell you stories that would rattle your mind, but I will not. Please make it make sense.
There is one other way in which society is shaped by the tensions of finite sexuality, in its orientation toward property. Since sexuality is the only finite game in which the winner's prize is the loser, the most desirable form of property is the publicly acknowledged possession of another's person, a relationship to which the possessed must, of course, freely consent. All other forms of property are considerably less desirable, even when they are vast in quantity. The true value of my property, in fact, varies not with its monetary worth, but with its effectiveness in winning for me the declaration that I am the master player in our game with each other. The most serious struggles are those for sexual property. For this, wars are fought, lives are generously risked, great schemes are initiated. However, who wins empire, fortune, and fame, but loses in love, has lost in everything.
So, hey, did we all forget that for the past few years, billionaires have been building these private doomsday bunkers in case of a worker-led revolution? As the chance of recession grows higher, billionaires like Kim Kardashian, Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk, and Mark Zuckerberg are building luxurious bunkers just in case we've all finally had enough. These aren't your average storm shelters either. We're talking underground bunkers with spas, movie theaters, gyms, art vaults, panic rooms, and blast-proof doors. When things go bad, they plan to ride it out in luxury far from the chaos that the rest of us might face. One of the most extravagant is Project Airy, a $300 million underground complex developed by strategically armored and fortified environments in Virginia. Scheduled to open in 2026 near Washington, D.C., this is just the beginning of a network of luxury bunkers planned across 50 U.S. cities with 1,000 affiliate locations worldwide. Each unit could cost up to $20 million and is designed to withstand nuclear fallout. The complex will house up to 625 super wealthy individuals, offering cover for when society collapses. Now, back in November, I did report that billionaires were dumping stocks and hoarding cash like they knew something was coming. One believer in capitalism told me I was spreading misinformation, saying a recession was nowhere in sight. But now financial analysts are raising recession risks daily, and it feels like these billionaires were just a few steps ahead of the rest of us, doesn't it? And while we brace for inflation and layoffs and rent hikes, let's not forget Oxfam reports that the richest 1% have taken nearly 2/3 of all new wealth since 2020, hoarding $26 trillion while the rest of us struggle. And as things get worse, they're preparing with massive funds while the rest of us can't even stockpile the basics. These billionaires plan to disappear underground when things go south. But maybe the real question isn't whether a recession is coming. We know it is. But what do they know that we don't, and who in the world told them?
There's something that I wanted to talk about for a while now, and today when I opened up TikTok, this was the first video I saw, and I thought, okay, that's it. Today's the day I've got to address it.
I think it's fitting we go out like this. I think it's very fitting that we go out with a man who doesn't know how to take no for an answer. Just ask Greenland or E. Jean Carroll. I don't know, where to even start. My job's getting taken from me. TikTok is hopefully not getting banned again. Oh, my goodness. Right before TikTok fucking took my biggest video ever from me, so that was pretty awesome. Fuck this goddamn country, this stupid fucking country that we live in. This dumb fucking world that we live in. In what fucking universe is any of this just gonna be taken fucking lightly? Are you so fucking serious right now? Dude, the world is about to explode. The world is gone. It's done. It's forever gone now. I hope you're so happy, dude.
Okay, no hate to that creator. He goes on for another 8 minutes like that. First of all, we now know that TikTok is not getting banned. Trump signed another extension, as I said he would, which is why I wasn't worried about TikTok going away. But I want to specifically address this mindset of the world is ending. It's all over. This is the apocalypse. We're completely screwed. This is absolutely the destruction of everything we hold dear. We'll never recover. Give up hope. We're completely screwed. Accept our fate. The world is exploding. As he said, this
belief that like it's all ending, it's all over. That is a deeply, deeply flawed premise. Things are really bad right now, and some things are coming to an end. Some things are changing, not for the better. But when you say like, this is the end, we are screwed, the world is ending, you're really clinging to a very doomsday kind of end times eschatological thinking. I would just encourage, especially Americans, to examine where that belief comes from. Now, I'm no theologian and I'm definitely not an expert on cults, and I know that Knitting Cult Lady has talked about this a little bit, this kind of catastrophizing and acting like we're doomed is very much a cult-like mentality, is very much an end times cult mentality. But me, as an ex-evangelical, I can say it's also very much an evangelical ideology as well. And also because I have said many times in the past, folks on the far left have often not unpacked their evangelical upbringing, and they bring a lot of their eschatology with them. Folks on the left are often very much like this too, often very much doomers, often very much like the world is ending, very apocalyptic in their mindset. This kind of thinking is incredibly harmful. It doesn't help us as individuals, and it definitely doesn't help any resistance movement against fascism. I just really want to encourage folks who may feel the way that that creator does to examine why it is that you have an apocalyptic mindset, why you believe that when things get really bad, that it must be the end times, why you are anxious to believe when things are difficult that everything is about to end, and how that thinking, that mindset very much leads to apathy and despair. I made a recent video about the audacity of hope and how hope requires us to take action. I was referencing one of my favorite authors, Rebecca Solnit, where she talks about how despair is easier. Despair is safer for us than hope. We don't have to do anything when we despair. We just have to sit here and passively receive what is happening to us. We don't have to act at all. And despair says that the future is a known quantity. I am giving up and I am allowing what I see coming to just roll over me. Despair is easier and safer, and definitely apathy is easier and safer. Hope, on the other hand, requires us to act, and hope says the future is as of yet unknown. You have not yet written it. You do not have to consign yourself. You do not have to resign yourself to whatever the fascists are telling you is going to happen. But in order to bring about something different, you have a responsibility to act. Hope is dangerous because it requires us to be participants in our own lives and our own futures. It requires us to take risks. And it also says you have to reach out into the unknown. And that can be a lot more frightening for us than to just say, it's all ending, it's all over. To give up and accept that this is the end and everything from here on out is terrible is to close yourself off to the belief and the reality that we can push through this and create something different and better on the other side of it. That the future is not yet written, and that we can be part of history. We can be part of changing the future. That things will go on, they will continue, and we can have a hand in what that looks like. That's what hope gives us. That's what hope tells us. And that's really scary. That's daunting. Hope is for the courageous. Hope spurns action, and action needs hope in order to get us going in the first place. I understand when things feel really big and scary, and it feels like there is this just rapid accumulation of terrible, awful thing after terrible, awful thing, and you just feel completely inundated and overwhelmed by it. It can be easy to just say like, okay, I'm just going to give up. I'm just going to resign myself that it's all over. Life as I know it is over. The world is ending. I may not believe in a biblical end times, but I'm still going to embrace that apocalyptical thinking that's been drilled into me my entire life. I'm going to lean into that worldview that I had instilled in me at a very young age, even though I think I've deconstructed from it. Maybe I haven't. Times are really hard right now, but this is not the end. This is an opportunity for the beginning of something else. I said in a recent video that as a permaculturist, like we think cyclically. We don't think linearly, right? So it's not that something is ending and the timeline is cut off. When something dies, it's an opportunity for regrowth, rebirth, something new, something better, an increase in biodiversity, that everything is recycled and repurposed and reused. And we allow the cycle of life to help push us toward abundance. So I just encourage folks, instead of thinking very linearly and like we are ending up in the end times and the chapter of the book is about to swing closed and we're just doomed, instead to think cyclically and think that the wheel is turning and we are entering into a really difficult phase of the cycle, but that's not like death and the end, that is an opportunity for rebirth, for resources to get recycled in the system, right? That this is an opportunity for us to emerge on the other side of this and come back up into the light. I understand for a lot of folks, especially for like maybe upper middle class folks, you are really having a hard time. You are facing how daunting life will be under Trump. You are watching your 401k melt into oblivion. You are watching the money that you worked for your whole life just go completely down the toilet. You are watching Donald Trump destroying your socioeconomic status, your prosperity, your future. And maybe the collapse of the economy is the first time what Trump is doing is actually really hurting you, and it feels really scary. But not just Trump, the American system in general has been hurting and oppressing people for a long time, right? And as like a middle-aged, middle-class white lady, I try to watch content from people who have a different lived experience than me, and I try to make it a priority to listen to Black creators especially. And I've learned so much about their perspective on hope and their perspective on perseverance. And I've heard from creators who definitely don't have this end times thinking because they have had to endure much longer periods of suffering and discrimination and having to struggle with things not being as they should be, having to struggle against a system, but also find joy and live in a system that is actively trying to hurt them in ways that I think we are just beginning to experience, right? They have endured for centuries, things that we are just facing for the first time. And so for us, like weeks in to say this is the end times and it's all over, I would just really encourage you to look to people who have had far greater experience with long suffering and forbearance and endurance than we have, and look to their example. Because this is not the end. And if we allow ourselves to hope and we let that hope prompt us to act, we can build something better. We can get through this. We can topple authoritarianism, and we can create an American society that actually benefits the working class, that actually is of and by and for the people. We can rekindle the American dream as something that is accessible for everybody here, not just the super rich, that the American dream really is about contentment, prosperity, community. It is about making sure that everybody here has a good quality of life. We have the opportunity to get through this and to build that future. This is not the end.
The reason why fascists want fascism so bad is because they want to have more rape. In a society that is focused on domination, control, and force, what do you think the end goal really is? Without even looking at the history of forced breeding under like the Nazi regime, we can just infer that if your values are power, dominance, and control, that's actually just revealing a lot of your fucked up inner sexual desires. You can't have a deep hatred towards Black people and Jewish people and then in the same breath say, I love women and I respect women. That doesn't make any sense. All oppression is linked and connected to itself. You're either fearless in the face of the things you don't understand, or you're not.
Europeans don't end empires. They abscond. They flee the scene of the crime, dressed as diplomats and humanitarians. They don't sign peace. They draft policy memos, build statues to themselves, and fly out the gold while the ink is still wet. Their empires don't collapse. They shapeshift. From gunpowder to banks, from direct rule to trade law, from chains to currency. The British Empire never ended. It just changed outfits. The Union Jack came down and the World Bank moved in. Ghana gained independence in 1957, but the British retained mining contracts, rail control, and pricing power through Anglo Gold and Barclays. Jamaica left the empire in 1962, yet Elizabeth II remained head of state. The IMF arrived with austerity, and bauxite exports flowed directly into UK smelters. They lost the colonies, but kept the economies. France pulled out of Algeria in 1962, only after 1 million deaths and 132 years of occupation. But their fingerprints remained on oil rigs, phone lines, and every Western-aligned coup from Algiers to Dakar. They left Vietnam in 1954, and within a decade were back laundering torture techniques through American advisors in Saigon. They pulled out of Haiti in 1804, after losing the only successful slave revolution in modern history, but made Haiti pay 150 million francs in compensation to French slavers, with interest, paid until 1947. Belgium never ended its rule over Congo. It just removed the flag and installed Mobutu. Trained by the CIA, bankrolled by Brussels, allowed to loot the country with Western approval as long as he suppressed Pan-Africanism. When Lumumba tried to nationalize Congo's resources, Belgium assassinated him and buried him in sulfuric acid. His tooth was kept in a Belgian drawer for 60 years, like a colonial keepsake. Germany lost its colonies in 1918, but from Namibia to Togo, they never returned the land, never paid reparations, never acknowledged the genocide of the Herero and Nama people until 2021, and even then refused to legally classify it as reparations to avoid liability. They maintained global industrial reach through companies like Siemens, Bayer, and Krupp, built on slave labor, eugenics, and resource extraction. Portugal held on to Angola, Mozambique, Guinea-Bissau, and more until the 1970s. Their retreat wasn't voluntary. It was forced by anti-colonial guerrilla warfare, economic collapse, and internal revolution. And yet, the moment they left, Portuguese companies returned under post-colonial development charters. The Netherlands withdrew from Indonesia in 1949 after killing an estimated 150,000 people during the Indonesian National Revolution, and after centuries of controlling the spice trade through VOC monopoly capitalism, military force, and scorched earth famine policy. Spain ended its colonial presence in Latin America in the early 1800s, only after centuries of extermination, forced conversion, silver theft, and biological warfare. Yet even today, the monarchy celebrates its exploration legacy, while the church still holds wealth stolen from the Quechua, Nahua, and Mapuche civilizations. Even in collapse, they never gave back. They never apologized. They simply changed forms. The East India Trading Company was replaced by Shell, Unilever, and GlaxoSmithKline. Colonial governors became ambassadors. Viceroys became trade attaches. Military occupation became development aid. Cultural suppression became curricular standardization. White supremacy became secular modernity. The Sykes-Picot Agreement redrew the Middle East in 1916 like a butcher with a ruler, splitting the Levant into British and French zones, leading to a century of war, puppet regimes, border violence, and economic division. When the Ottoman Empire fell, Europe didn't stabilize it. They partitioned it. Palestine was handed to Britain. Iraq was fabricated. Syria and Lebanon became French territories. Today's chaos was built with a fountain pen at Versailles. When they left Kenya in the 1960s, the British ran mass detention camps, tortured Mau Mau fighters with castration and electric shock, and then classified over 300 boxes of colonial records, only declassifying them in 2011 after a lawsuit. They paid reparations to a handful of survivors, but kept the colonial legal codes in place. When they freed the Caribbean, they left behind monarchs, privatized sugar, and educational systems that taught about Shakespeare, but nothing about Toussaint Louverture. The Queen remained on the currency, while the people lived on IMF rations. The Commonwealth is not post-colonial. It's neo-colonial nostalgia, a club for ex-colonizers and still colonized nations to pretend empire is culture. Europe doesn't end empires. It launders them. Through museums, through curriculum, through development banks, through security agreements, through non-profits, through international law written in imperial languages. When you demand justice, they offer heritage. When you demand reparations, they offer trade deals. When you demand return of land, they say look forward, not back. But their wealth looks backward every single day to the centuries of plunder that built the banks, the borders, the universities, the crowns. Empires are not gone. They're just wearing different uniforms. Cope.
Children are inherently accountable because of the need to attach to their parents. Your child is taking accountability, whether you see it or not. They do that through substance abuse, through eating disorders. They have internalized the emotional neglect and abuse. Just because they're not saying sorry or changing their behavior towards you doesn't mean they're not taking accountability in other ways. When their attachment to you is threatened because you're mad at them, because you've punished them in the past when you're mad at them, instead of seeking to try to understand, they've internalized that voice, that when they have a feeling or when they're upset, when they don't like something, the other part of them just immediately shuts it down. But emotion is energy in motion, so it comes out other ways. Hence substance abuse, eating disorders. But on the other side, maybe workaholism, maybe an obsession with shopping, people pleasing. Maybe they're super close to you, but that's still taking accountability. You just don't see it that way.
I'm not the one who admitted they would be okay with killing babies in foster care and killing children that have been abused.
That's not the point. What I'm saying.
That's really.
Stop holding me. What the is wrong with you? Stop holding me. Stop my.
You have a. Oh my god. She just punched me in the face. We were just doing a street interview with my camera and everything was fine for over 20 minutes or however long we were filming, and then she just punched me in the face. Oh my god.
So I just came from the video of that abortion protester who got punched, and honestly, I think that was a misunderstanding. Because you guys remember duels, right? If two people could not reconcile their opinions, they would both go out in a field and they would fight it out with swords, and whoever won was right. And it was illegal, but if two people both agree that that's how they want to solve their differences, at a certain point you gotta let adults be adults. And I don't want to speak for women, because I'm not one, I can't get pregnant, I have a daughter, and that's the only dog I have in this fight. But I just went and looked up a study, and 25% of women have trouble with incontinence after childbirth, right? And if somebody rocks up to me on the sidewalk and is like, when I get through with you, you're gonna have trouble holding your piss, I assume we are in a fight. When you see somebody advocating for forced childbirth, what they're saying to this person who's going to be forced to go through the childbirth is, when I'm done with you, you will be in the ER. You will be in the ER with a needle full of painkillers in your spine. Like the lady who did the punching, right? If she's standing in an alley and a guy comes up to her and is like, I'm gonna leave scars on you that will change the kind of clothing you can wear, she'd fucking pepper spray him in the face and nobody would say boo. If a guy goes, your body, my choice, I'm gonna dilate your cervix to 10 centimeters, and if you try to fight me off, you're the one going to jail, you'd fucking punch him. And so for this lady to go up to this other lady and go, I'm not going to do that to you personally, but I'm going to work really hard to make sure that it does happen to you, I can see why the other lady would think that this was a duel situation, that they were in a fight now.
Nothing tastes as good as skinny feels. Have you ever considered that maybe you're just a really shitty cook and a really shitty baker? Or maybe you just don't like the cuisine from your country and culture? Have you ever considered that maybe it's not
See Hillstream loaches. Meat. Guppy.
I know it's fuzzy.
The algae?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I got a ton of bodies.